Hey, it's Ryan with SMB. Today we're going to be installing our fully loaded leveling kit on this new 24 Power Stroke here. So we've already got the truck in the air, wheel off, and we'll kind of run you through each component here and show you what we're about to be replacing when we still have the factory stuff in here. Then we're going to drop the axle out of the truck and kind of show you step by step as we go in with all the new stuff. So you can come over here and we'll start showing you kind of exactly what we're going to be doing today. So most obvious thing is going to be the shocks. We're using our Performance Elite Series shocks by Fox for the 2.5-inch leveling height here. We're going to be replacing these radius arms as well as doing radius arm drops. That's going to correct our caster and give us some adjustment on the caster too. We're also going to be doing our 2.5-inch levelers, adjustable levelers, so we can get any ride height and perfect it from left to right. We're going to be doing a bump stop drop here to accommodate for the lifted height. We're going to be dropping the sway bar down a little bit as well as increasing our length here. We're going to be installing a new track rod bracket and an all new adjustable track rod as well. And then we're going to be doing our steady axis steering here. And that's going to allow us to run a Fox ATS stabilizer, make the truck drive really well. So it's going to be a new pitman arm nut. We're going to put a new drag link in here and then install the ATS stabilizer right here. And that's the bulk of it. We're also going to be doing some limit straps here for those longer link shocks, but we'll show you all of it as we get into it more and start tearing some stuff apart right now. So first up, we're going to get the sway bar dropped out of the truck. So we'll show you exactly, pull the links off here, and then we're going to get the actual frame mounts dropped out of the truck too. So your truck has the level sensors here on the radius arms for the weight scale and the automatic headlights and everything. Really important to get these removed before you start tearing out any of the shocks or drop the axle. Otherwise, it's just going to break this arm in half. We have new arms, so if you do break it, you can get one from us or from Ford. But just pop this ball off with the panel popper at the bottom, and after marking it for your ride height. So two very important steps to do before you tear anything apart. One is to mark right here so you know ride height when we go in with the new adjustable links right here, and then step two, get this removed before dropping the axle out of the truck, just to save yourself one of these brackets. I'm going to go ahead and remove the lower shock bolts next. We're going to go ahead and remove the factory shocks now next. So this is going to be a 21 millimeter on these newer trucks. Next up, we got our shocks out. We got our scale linkages removed, and we pulled a whole sensor on this side. So we may have broken a bracket. We're going to move under here and remove the stabilizer, and then we're going to drop the track rod out of the truck. And so we'll get the stabilizer off, start working towards the pitman arm, getting the drag link out of the truck, track rod out. We've got the whole axle resting on the pipe stands now, and then we're just going to use the lift to control the height here. And we need to get this brake line removed too before we go up much higher. So keep moving to get this whole axle dropped all the way out of the truck. So yeah, brake line next, drag link, track rod, and stabilizer, and this thing will fall right out of it. So now we got the drag link dropped. We're going to measure this here from center to center, as well as to our all we need is center to center. So, and then we'll get this loosened up, unthread this original drag link, and get our new one installed and just get it roughly close so we don't have to go on completely out of alignment. We got the nut removed at the bottom of the track rod on the passenger side here. So the whole track rod out of here. Drag link's gone, and then we're going to move up to the track rod bracket next. We're gonna use a 46mm and go ahead and pull the pitman arm. So we're gonna pull the pitman arm now. There's two ways to do this. You can use like the standard fork style puller, or use a large pitman arm press like this. So either work, and we'll show you kind of how both work. I'll shoot a different video on a different truck, but this the large style here slips right in on the back side. Then we'll tighten this bolt up, and it's just gonna pop that pitman arm right off the
Put that away. Tap the end of it.
Next, we're going to take the springs and perches out of the truck, so we can install our levelers. So to get we'll do this first and take the management tab off here. Make sure we save this bolt because this will get reused. And then we'll do the same on the other side. Lift the truck up a little bit, and that'll let us pop the spring out from the upper bucket here.
One more. Good. Good. Well, we got to go until the things are pretty much tight.
Next up, we're going to get the vacuum line disconnected from the radius arm here. So to do so, panel popper, and then we need to pull the vent line off the front differential like that, and then go on and remove the purchase where our adjustable levelers are going to go. So this is going to be an 18mm on both sides. We'll get that popped off next. We go ahead and get the bump stop hanger removed now because we're going to be dropping this down a little bit. So we'll pull the bump stop out, and then these are going to be 10mm. We'll do the same thing on the other side. We're done pulling stuff out of the truck now, so we're going to kind of go over what we got to install here. These are going to be our billet aluminum radius arms, fully adjustable for caster with our end plates here. So that's going to give you the correct amount of caster at a 2.5-inch lift. That's super important for how your Super Duty is going to ride. We've got our new track rod, fully adjustable in the truck as well, so easy to align once it's on the rack. We've got our radius arm drops, also an important part of getting the caster right. We've got our track rod bracket here, which is important to how the truck rides and where that axle position is underneath the truck. We've got our adjustable levelers right here. So these are going to allow us to fine tune the ride height underneath the factory coils or under any aftermarket coil. So we just got these two spanner nuts here, and from left to right, front to back, we can do whatever we need to with the ride height. We've got our weight scale brackets here since this truck came equipped with them. So this is going to allow you to recalibrate that weight scale for the new ride height. We've got a 11-16 Ford drag link right here, OEM parts. You can get this at any Ford dealer. This is going to allow us to run our steady track system. The steady track bracket right here, which is going to be what the ATS stabilizer mounts to on one end, and then it's going to mount on the other end to this pitman arm, and we include a new pitman arm bracket right here. So that's all part of that steady track system. We've got our sway bar drops over here, new end links, new axle adapters, as well as our limit strap kit here, our bump stop drops, and then we've got a Fox ATS stabilizer and some Fox Performance Elite shocks going in this truck. So you'll kind of see these parts come together, and I'll give you a better overview as we start putting them in the truck, and it's easier to explain kind of what each one does. So we've got our adjustable leveler here. On this truck, we're going to go 2.5 inches from the bottom of the stud as a good starting point, and then we'll measure it and adjust left to right, front to back once we're in. So I'm just going to tape measure 2.5 off here. The post is going to install right on the axle. You'll see it once it's installed here, and then the bolt's going to drop in from the top. There's a washer as well. So we'll get all this in, and then, but I just wanted to kind of go over, this is how we're going to control our ride height. So make sure left to right for a good starting point that you get this measured out and installed the way you want in your truck. And that's going to depend on what springs you're going in with, what desired ride height is. For us, we're just going for 2.5 right out of the gate. So we'll spin these nuts up here, back the bottom one off, tighten the top. It's easier if you don't already have all the adapters on. Until we get this right at 2.5 before we go in the truck. We're going to put some red Loctite on this bolt, drop it in, torque this down to 140 foot-pounds, and then we'll come through and mark it with a paint pen afterwards so we know we torqued it.
facing forward.
We're going to go up now with the truck. We want to get our springs reinstalled. On this truck, we're doing a set of reservoir shocks, and this is our Fox Performance Elite reservoir mount bracket. So this is going to get sandwiched up top between the bucket and the rubber isolator here. And then the spring's going to sit on top of our provided perch on the bottom that's sized to match the spring. So we're going to basically lift the truck up until we can fit the spring in here. And then put some weight back down on it, and that's going to help keep the axle in place when we do the radius arms. So we've got our bolt marked here, and move on to the other side. And before we put weight back down on the axle, let's make sure this line management tab is facing forwards and backwards, and that's what we're going to bolt this plate to. So now's an easy time to move it before there's weight on the truck. So we're going to go into the truck here. We're going to leave the foam wrapper on just to be extra careful. It's easiest to put the bottom bolt in first. And then what we're going to do is use a 7/8 here. And basically we can loosen this jam nut a little bit. And once that's, I'll do it in a second so I don't scratch the body here. Once that's loose a little bit, you don't want to back it all the way off and lose your pressure in the shock here. But that'll let us spin this hose around, and then we can play with it in our reservoir mounts and get the hose routed perfectly. And I can jump to the other side and show you what exactly we're going for. So we've got our shock top nut installed here, bottom bolt installed, and then we got our line routed exactly pretty tight to the wheel well liner like we wanted it. Got our clamps. These are the clamps that came with the Fox shocks installed in the S&B provided bracket here. So we went ahead and tightened up our jam nut, and then everything's done basically on this side. So we're jumping over to the other side, knock that out, and then we can put some more weight back up on this axle. Let a little weight down on the truck, on the springs to help keep the axle in place, as well as got a jack stand here underneath the joint on the back of the front differential there to help keep the rotation of the axle too. So we've gotten these loose, and we're going to start removing the factory radius arms out of the truck so we can work on our radius arm drops and our new radius arms. I'm holding the driver's side OEM radius arm here. You can see the factory had the nut welded to this. So on ours, we're going to move the bottom nut to the top since we supply a adjustable cam bolt and nut here for the adjustable caster. So we'll move the bottom nut we removed up to the top when we go back in with our arms, and this will make sense once you see our arms going in. But yeah, completely normal that this is going to look a little different than what you're going in with, and that's just how we get that caster adjustment at the bottom. So I wanted to go over our radius arm drops real quick and kind of walk you through how they work and why they're extremely strong. So we have 4 points of contact. When these are put together, it's a 2-piece system, but that's only to make sure you can get it installed. Once these are bolted together, it's going to act like a 1-piece. So we bolt in from the side here. The other side, we have got the additional bolt we're going to drill for, and then the whole radius arm drop sits flush against the frame up here and is able to transfer force upwards. And then the rear section, which will lock the whole thing together. There can be some variations in the shape of this tab, how the frames are kind of welded, so we wanted to make sure these are 2 pieces so you can get everything installed easily. So we drop the bolt in, top down here since you can see the bolt head, and we got everything hand tight now. Got 2 of our bolts started between the 2 here, so we're going to start snugging everything up and lock this whole thing together before we move to drill our additional hole here. So we're going to go ahead and get everything torqued down now that we got our hole drilled and our tab bolt installed. So always refer to the instructions in here, but we're going to go 80 foot-pounds on the 1/2-inch bolt in the front. The 3/8 bolts between the 2 are going to go to 33. And then we're going to go to 225 on the 5/8 bolt in the back. And then the 2 big 3/4 bolts are going to go to 282. And then we'll chase these around with our paint pen after we get them all torqued and make sure, just keep doing that everywhere we go so that we know we torqued everything. Got our radius arms out here now on the table. So we've gone ahead and bolted up our plates, and the way to bolt these up, all the hardware is included. You'll see there's angle in the mount compared to the bushing in the back of it. So on the bigger side of the bushing, we're going to have the outside plate here, and they're marked with P for passenger. It actually goes this way in the truck. I have it upside down, and P for passenger, and then D for driver. So they look the same, opposites, but that has to be set up. They're not symmetrical for the truck once the plates are on them. The bars themselves are, but with the logo plate, that's going to set which side is which. We're looking at our radius arms here on the table, and you can see the angle between the bushing and the arm. And that angle was actually bent the other way back into these plates. So they're straight, you know, parallel, but we did that angle in the arm itself to give you a bunch of tire clearance. So when you're turning, our arm's going to be thinner because it's billet aluminum, and with this angle now the arm's tucked towards the center of the truck and then bends back out at the blades here. So it's just going to allow you to run the biggest, widest tires possible without running into any clearance issues with your radius arm. Oh, too much. Back. So we went ahead and got our caster adjustment bolt installed here. And then the top original factory bolt goes up on the top, and then the rear original bolt through our radius arm drop. So it's important, we can't torque any of these three until the truck's on the ground with weight on it, but we can go ahead and tighten up the bolts that hold the beam arm aluminum blades to the steel here. So we'll get those torqued down, get you a torque spec here in a second, and then get them all marked with our paint pen. So now we're going to go in on the driver's side, and on this upper one, we're going to have to come from the outside of the truck, just like the factory one did. We're going to reuse that factory bolt. It's in place now. And then we can go to the rear. Now we're going to go ahead and torque all of these to 225 foot-pounds. So we're going to go ahead and start installing our limit strap kit here. Included with the kit, this is going to be one side worth, the 12-inch limit strap, our frame bracket, the pull-through bolt kit here, and then the hardware to bolt all this on. So the first step is going to be to bolt the limit strap to the radius arm so we can line everything up. So we've got the truck, we basically lifted the truck until the spring was loose, and then we lowered the truck back down until the spring's tight. As soon as the spring got tight, which was right here, we stopped lowering the truck, so that's where we know we need to set the limit strap now that the spring is tight in the truck. So we'll go ahead, and then we're going to actually, I'll show you kind of how we lined it up. So first step will be to take the 12-inch limit strap. It bolts right in here. You're going to need the radius arms to do it. And then we will bolt the other side to our bracket at full extension. Now what we're going to look for is a flat spot on the frame. It's close, and this side's easy. The other side has a little bump, but the install is the same. So you're going to find a flat spot on the frame at full extension here, as close as possible to the shock tower. The further we get back, we're going to get into where the tire swings when you turn. So we want it real tight to the spring bucket here. And then I'm going to have someone hold it, and I'm going to grab a punch. And we're going to mark our two holes at full extension here. And so we'll put the camera down, I'll show you, we'll mark the two holes, then we're going to start drilling so we can feed our pull-through bolt kit. So we're going to drill these holes to 7/16. I don't have the best lubricant here, but it'll work for today. So right in where I punch, I'm going to start with a real small drill bit. There's one. Two, and we'll just start working our way up in drill bit size. So we're going to remove the bracket now from the clevis, and we're going to feed our wire through the bracket. You're gonna have a lot of extra wire, which is okay. You're gonna find your nearest hole right here. There's a hole right behind where we drilled on this 24 F-250. Every truck's a little different. This kit's pretty universal. So we're gonna go through our bracket. I like the top hole. Stick my finger in here. There's the wire. Sometimes it helps to look underneath. Just don't poke yourself in the eye. Okay, right here. Great. So, knot out here. We're gonna feed the wire through the hole. Just put any kind of knot back in here so it doesn't pull through the hole. That's all we're trying to do there. And we're gonna wrap this as tight as we can around the threads. Try to get a bunch of wraps. The more wraps, the better this is gonna work. It's gonna resist the wire coming off the bolt itself. All right, that's probably good. Make sure you don't have any overlaps or it won't go through the hole. We're gonna feed up. And here comes our tab. Okay. And so here, we're just gonna keep wiggling it. Try to get this thing through the hole. There's the second side of it. So now we can feed this over. Once we get enough out of here, so we're gonna pull on the bottom of it. Try to get enough out to start the nut in the washer. So now we're going to snug up the bottom one, which is going to pull this top one out, and I'm going to unwind as much of the wire as I can. It doesn't really matter. There we go. Okay. And then we're just going to cut that off. As low down as we can. And finish up with our second bolt. These are going to get torqued down to 33 foot-pounds. We can grab our clevis, run our first jam nut onto it. Should just be enough to get the second one fully started. Perfect. And we'll start tightening, torquing everything down. These are gonna go to 33 foot-pounds. Pull up the torque sheet here. So we're gonna be at 33 foot-pounds on our 3/8/16 bolts here. We're gonna be at 80 foot-pounds on our 1/2 inch hardware. It's gonna be the top and the bottom. And then the jam nuts go to 80 as well, right here. So we'll get all that torqued down now, and the limit strap install is complete. Now we're gonna go ahead and install our bump stop drops here. So you're gonna take this aluminum spacer, and then the bolt and the washer, and just reuse your factory bump stop hanger. We're gonna add a little bit of red Loctite here. And then these are gonna be a 13 millimeter. Then we'll take our foam bump stop and click it back in like that. So we got our new pitman arm. We're gonna install this with the slant facing downwards. We're going to liberally apply red Loctite in all the splines. We never want this to come off. And then this is going to be keyed. I remember how the last one came off. So going right there. And then we have a 2-inch pitman arm nut, which we will also apply some red Loctite to. All right, torquing our pitman arm nut down now. Shove the pitman arm to lock at one side, all the way towards the driver's side of the truck here. And we're going to torque this as close to 500 foot-pounds as we can get. So we've got a big 3/4 inch torque wrench, 2-inch socket, and we're going on now. One thing to note here is that the nut, the shaft does not bottom out in the nut. We still have a few threads showing, but that's on purpose as we make our nut longer and we want to use every thread possible. So our nut's actually a little taller than the factory nut. So you will see a few threads exposed. That's not a problem. We're at 504 foot-pounds on this one, so definitely not coming off, and going to be very safe. Next, we're going to remove the OEM stabilizer mount here and reuse this hardware. Oh, I already have it right. So we got our steady track bracket now. We're going to loosely install the cross brace here and get everything ready so that we can go up in the truck. These two are going to take the original bolt hole locations from the factory stabilizer, and then we'll drill for the cross member here. So this will help us get it all lined up in the truck quickly. And then our ATS stabilizer is going to mount right here. And then we're going to install our new steady track bracket here. And we're not going to tighten these all the way up, but let's get this one started. With both bolts started on the frame side, we can start our support bolt through the cross member. And then we can start snugging up all of this hardware. We've now got everything in the truck and we're ready to start torquing it down. So we went to 80 foot-pounds. This one's already torqued with red Loctite here. And then we are going to go to 33 foot-pounds on these smaller bolts. And then up on the frame side bolts, which are tucked in back there, we're going to 65 foot-pounds. So next up, we're going to put the track link back, or track rod bracket back in the truck. We're going to reuse the 3 tabs, the 3-tab bolt here. Push that back to the cross member and all the factory hardware there, and then reuse the 2 bolts on the frame side here. We'll get all those started, and then that'll let us mark the hole we're going to drill for the additional bolt to just help strengthen this thing up even more. So one thing to note too is this brake line. Make sure you don't pinch it when you install this bracket or tighten it down. We've got plenty of clearance. Same thing over here on the steady track side. We've got both of these started. We're going to go ahead and tighten all of this up now. And with it really tight, we can mark our last hole here and drill that out and install the additional bolt that we provide. And then we'll be ready to keep going. now we're going to torque everything down on our track rod bracket here. We're going to be at 80 foot-pounds on the additional one that we drilled our hole for here, and then 130 for the factory 3 bolts, 130 over here, 130 over here, and then when the track rod goes in, it's going to be at about 406 foot-pounds. So we've got all these torqued down now, and we're going to move on to the next step. So we're going to go ahead and install the track rod now. You got to reuse the nut on the factory end here, and then as well as the bolt. So we've got it measured pretty close for it within, but this will be set at alignment. One important thing is we are not going to torque down the track rod bracket end of this, that bolt and nut right there that he's pointing to, with it in the air. Doing so will rip the bushing out of the truck once we put it at ride height, since that bushing is going to be squished at the stroop height versus ride height. So we're going to wait till it's on the ground at ride height and then torque that one down to the 406 foot-pounds. But we are good to torque over here. We're going to go to 220 foot-pounds here on the bottom of this track rod. So we went ahead and got the drag link threaded back in to the coupler here. We measured out our 43 inches from center to center again. I have it pretty close. We haven't tightened any of this down. And then our drag link now, the big difference is we're going to install from the bottom up into the pitman arm, and that's going to allow us to run the steady track up above. So originally the drag link sat on top of the pitman arm. That's why we replaced the drag link, so that we have more clearance in this joint to go under the pitman arm. So we'll get a nut on this, and then we'll be ready to install our steady track bracket on top. One thing to do on our ATS stabilizer before we put in the truck, we're going to want to remove this bolt here, and then we're going to put some red Loctite on it. We've seen a few of these. They're pretty loose. It needs to swivel, but we've seen a few of them back out when they're installed in the truck, and then this thing will swing down and hit everything in the front end. So super good step, preventative, before it goes in the truck. Just back this out and then run it back in with red Loctite. We got the ATS stabilizer sitting here on the table. A few things: we already backed this bolt out, Loctited it, tightened it back up, make sure it never comes out in the truck. So it's going to be a little harder to wiggle this around now, but we'll take it. The other thing we're going to do is pull one of the 4 bolts out here and make sure the length is right so these don't bottom out. We've seen some of these assembled incorrectly. They should be 1.5 inches from head to base, and that'll let this clamp all the way down. Otherwise it'll never get tight. And then we can pre-install our sleeve loosely, and this bolt that's going to go through our steady track bracket, as well as our nut and bolt for this. So we'll show you how all this works in the truck. On the other end of it, we can go ahead and snip the factory rod end out of this thing, and instead press in the new one that we provide right here. And that's just going to be symmetrical basically to the other side and allow it to fit in our bracket here. So we got the ATS on the table here. We can start getting this thing assembled. First up, we'll take the rod end. I showed you how to get this in here. We checked the bolt length. We can install our bolt with the big washer and another big washer, and then a small washer and nut. We'll just leave this loose until we go into the truck with it. And then we can go ahead and torque these down. These are all going to go to 12 foot-pounds. We'll do that next. We'll start over here then at the pitman arm side. And this is going to be here's the bolt we provide. Installs into the countersunk hole. We can put that on the table. Slide our rod end over that. And then this is going to be fully floating tab on the top here. I'll hold that with one hand. And we want to make sure that this sits flush with our bracket before we start torquing it. So it's all the way down there. We'll apply a little bit of Loctite. And this is going to go to 60 foot-pounds. So I've got my ratchet right here. with the drag link installed, we've now got our ATS pre-assembled. And we're going to slide that in, the pitman arm bracket over the pitman arm, and then on the other side we're going to go bolt, big washer, the ATS itself, and then another big washer, and then the frame side bracket. I'll show you that. This will be easier if I come in now with the drag link. And then install the original nut back on top. And then on this side, you can see you can get that all hand tight now, so it's going to sit in place. We provide an extra lock nut, which we won't use here since this had an eye lock on it from the factory. Next bolt that's going to go in is going to be the bottom bolt for our pitman arm bracket. Just going to go under the pitman arm, bolt washer, and then washer nut on the outside. So now we can start working to tighten everything down in here. So before we tighten down this end of the SteadyTrack ATS bracket here, we want to align the angle of the pitman arm and the pitman arm nut, and the easiest reference is going to be that nut right there, and the angle of our bracket right here. And so this is completely free floating because it's on the spacer. So we were able to tighten this down on the bench, and then all we have to tighten in the truck is the bolt through it. So we'll stand right where the camera is and make sure that's perfectly aligned. It looks like it needs to come forwards a little bit or down. So we're pretty close right there. We'll line it up and then get this tightened up. So we're going to torque all these down. The pitman arm bolt's going to go to 180 foot-pounds. We're going to go to about 20 foot-pounds down here on the smaller 3/8 bolt. And then we're going to go to 80 foot-pounds over here. We've got the track rod and the drag link in the truck now. So we torqued, obviously, the joint end of the track rod here. We can't torque this till it's on the ground at ride height. But we can go ahead and tighten some of this up if we're going to be driving it to the alignment shop. We're already doing it where our alignment rack is, so we're leaving our jam nuts loose and our set screws loose. But once you're ready, you're going to want to tighten your jam nuts and then a little bit of Loctite in your set screw here, and that'll make sure that this can't move. And then the same thing on this end of the drag link, just tighten our clamps down. We're leaving it loose because we're on the alignment rack right now, but once we're aligned, we'll go ahead and tighten these and these down. These are going to be 2 alignment adjustment points as well as our caster bolts here, so which also need to be torqued when the thing's on the ground. We're going to install our sway bar drops now. The 6-hole side is going to face downwards, 2-hole side is going to face up, and then we're going to reuse the factory nuts here on both of these. And then on the axle side, we have our axle adapters here, and there are 2 sides to these, so you're going to face the corner away. There's a driver and passenger side, so this needs to be facing the outside of the truck, and then it's going to be bolt, washer, nut, and we will get those started next. So then we're going to torque the half bolt here on the bottom to 80 foot-pounds. Factory bolts are going to go to 33, 33, and these are actually also going to go to 33 once we start bolting our sway bar in place. We're now going to install our end links into our axle adapters here, and they're going to go on the inside of the axle adapter and face directly upwards. Then we can remove our top nuts as well. And then we'll install the sway bar into the truck. So we're going to slide the sway bar over the end links here. And we can pivot it up into place. Need one of those. And we have a couple different mounting hole options here. On this truck, we're going to be going into the middle hole. But this is going to let you make sure your sway bar doesn't rub your tire at full lock either direction. So If you do, you can adjust the sway bar further forwards or further backwards, just depending on wheel size and how far you're lifting the truck. Today we're just using this middle hole. We're gonna now torque our sway bar end links down to 50 foot-pounds, and then these 2 bolts on the sway bar drops are gonna go to 33. So we'll get both sides end links at 50, both sides worth of here at 33, and then we'll be done with the sway bar relocate. We're now gonna reinstall the brake line management tab, put a little bit of Loctite on the original bolt, and then we provide new nuts. This bracket has like a tab in it on one side, and then the bolt goes through on the other. Oh, 13 and a 10 millimeter on this truck. Next, we're going to reinstall the brake line tab. This truck, brake lines are pointing long, so this is a full droop on the limit strap right here, and we've still got plenty of slack. Sometimes this tab will be tight up here. We've got a drop that you can kind of massage this brake line a little bit and move this down, and it just bolts into that hole and then allows the tab to bolt, you know, about 1/2 inch, 1 inch down below. There's multiple options, so it's a great solution if you have that issue, but here we don't, so we're not going to use it. We are just going to get this rammed back in. So I pulled this off the other side. This is the weight scale from the other side. We're actually going to move the one from the driver's side here over to the passenger side and vice versa. And what that's going to do is flip. So you can see here, it's going to go on the inside of the body mount and bolt into the same hole. And then that's going to move our arm position back so that we can have it further back on the arm here and make sure that sensor is still calibrated for the new radius of the longer, you know, further down droop we have going on here, the new ride height. So we have a whole new linkage kit and brackets that will get installed next, but the first step is going to be to remove both of your sensors and swap the sides of them. So I'll set this down. And then with the bolt removed, we can now unhook the sensor, just push down on the tab, and then panel popper under this tab. We'll put that on the ground. Grab our passenger side unit here. Same 2 tabs. And then we will just droop this right underneath. I've got the passenger side one installed. We're gonna do the same thing and fish this harness over the top of the body mount here. And then same thing. Connect it underneath, and then we will get this tied up out of the way back behind the body mount. So you can cut this down once it's at ride height, and I'll show you how we're going to figure out. We have it written, so we marked them before we took them off. So we'll set it there, get the truck at ride height, and then cut this so the eye lands right here, and then heat shrink our tubing, and it'll all look really good. We got all the weight on the truck now, so we're going to go ahead and start working on our weight scale system here. So I'm just measuring from center of the ball to center of the ball at the line I marked. We are right at about 9 3/4 of an inch. So we will thread this on all the way, measure from center of the ball to center. We're at about 12 3/4. So we need to remove 3 inches from our all thread here. So I know I need to take 3 inches off this. I'm going to actually take a little bit extra just because I have adjustability in both the ball ends since these are threaded. And I'd rather be able to back those out a little bit and use the jam nut to make it back. Make sure you thread your nut on. I mean, it's all threads, so you can come back the other way, but this is going to clean the threads up after you cut it. Kind of use it to chase the threads off. So we're going to go to 3 1/8 right here, and then I'll just use this as a cut mark. So we got our heat shrink on now. Rod cut to length, click the bottom on, And we got the top lined up, and I think I've got it pretty much spot on with height. Maybe one more rotation, we'll see where that lands us. That's perfect. We'll go on there and tighten our jam nut up. 13 millimeter here. And on the bottom as well. And we are good to go. So at ride height now, we're going to start torquing down all of our bolts that are in bushings. So we're going to do our rear radius arm bolt here to 220, the upper on the front, as well as our cam bolt down below to 180 per their spec. And then we've already torqued down the track rod, and this truck's about to be aligned. So we didn't do our drag link adjuster yet or the track rod adjustment yet, since it's about to be on the alignment rack. So we'll go ahead and get all these torqued down. Since we're also about to align this truck, we're not going to do our alignment cam right now or this upper, so we can actually pivot the axle with the alignment cam. But if you're driving your truck to an alignment shop, very important to get all these torqued down, as well as your track rod and your drag link, so that you're safe to drive the truck. Ryan with S&B, they were going to be installing our 10-10-26 frame mounts here for the Torx bars. So there's one, this is a driver's side mount, the passenger is just the mirror of this. These are going to sit right up here underneath the front of the leaf spring perch, allow us to mount our Torx bars to the bottom of our U-bolts over there. So to get started, we're just going to remove the factory bumper from the frame here. There'll be 3 bolts and 1 on the bottom. Just one. Get all the clip nuts out of here. I'm going to take one of our tab bolts here, or tab nuts, I guess, nut plates, however you want to call this. We have them pre-installed. This is going to sit with the 2 towards the front, so it'll look like that in the truck. I'm going to reuse that hole. And then put our plate up. Get this started by hand. Somewhat tight, so we can slide it. We're going to push the mount all the way forwards, and then tighten it up by hand the rest of the way. And so we can see our 3 holes on top are lined up. We've got 1 of the 3 on the bottom lined up now. So we're going to go ahead and drill these with the mount in place now to make sure they line up. We're going to go ahead and remove this now that our pilot holes are through. I just don't want to damage the threads. I've been stepping these up. We started at like a few 16ths. That last hole was a 3/8. We're going to finish off with a 1/2 inch drill bit here for our 1/2 inch hardware. And clean up all of our shavings. And then we'll come in here and paint the raw metal. Got some touch-up paint here. We're just going to run this around the threads for the hole we just drilled. Now that it's painted, and I installed the first bolt loosely, so that now I can work on getting my second and 3rd bolts installed here. These might be a little tighter. We can wiggle this whole thing around now. We went ahead and installed our nut plate, got our unit back up here. Now we can go ahead and do the top one. So This one's kind of a dance with 2 hands. Okay. Go. All of our 1/2-inch hardware here to 80 foot-pounds. Driver's side's torqued down. This is ready to go. We'll get the bar installed here once we have our axle plates or our axle mounts done. Moving to the passenger side, what we're going to do is measure from the front of this plate to here, and then I'll show you on the passenger side right here. We're just going to copy that measurement. There's no holes pre-drilled, unfortunately, so we're just going to clamp it up, and we will match that measurement here, get this clamped into place, and then start drilling our holes the same way we drilled them on the other side. So next up, we're going to be mounting our underframe adapters or under axle adapters. There's a few options. This is a 250. It's a 250 350 truck, so we have a plate that just will go right above these bolts. So you leave the bottom plate installed, and then we have our under bottom plate. It's going to be a 10-10-41 for the 250 350 trucks. For the 450s, it's going to use a 10-10-42. We also have universal bottom plates that replace this and work with a 3.5-inch and 4-inch axle, which is what I'm going to be installing today to show you how that works. That's going to be part number 10-10-44. And then if you have a 4.5-inch axle tube, you're going to be on a 10-10-45. So regardless of what axle you have, we have something that's going to work for you if your U-bolt's down configuration to fit Torx bars. So now we're going to go ahead and just rip all our U-bolts off. So we're going to do a few changes. We got the U-bolts dropped off this side. We're also going to remove the bottom traction control leaf right here. So this leaf on a factory truck is completely necessary, but once we install our Torx bars here or any other of our S&B traction bars, this leaf becomes much less necessary and kind of is just a hindrance to the ride quality. It doesn't do a ton for your overall payload, as it doesn't even come in contact with the spring. At ride height it's closer, but it's mainly there to stop the axle from pitching either direction. Well, we control that here. So I've got my U-bolts out. I'm going to go ahead and throw a clamp on the back of this spring here, just to keep this together. You can see our pin is visible now, and so we're going to hop on the pin kit here. And separate these leaves. Okay. I'm going to reinstall our pin and throw our block back in here. Like so. And then we can begin to bring the axle back up into place. All right. We got our block reinstalled here. We removed that traction control leaf, so a little thicker leaf height now. So we went in with a slightly shorter U-bolt. We would use that universal under axle mount like I talked about. This will fit any axle mount, and this works with our traction bars as well. I'd recommend just using the under bottom plate one, so then you don't have to do all this, and you can reuse your factory bottom plate. That'll be a 10-10-41 or 10-10-42, depending on if you have a 250, 350, or 450. Now we're going to torque our U-bolts down. We went in with 3/4 inch U-bolts here, so these will get torqued a little bit tighter. Follow the instructions in your U-bolt kit. If you have 5/8 U-bolts, it's a little bit less torque than the 3/4 inch ones. So we'll get these torqued down right now and then move to the other side. So super important, you have your bolt, big black flange washer, a bushing, there's an O-ring in here, another O-ring, bushing, big black washer, and then that bushing through the middle, the aluminum tube, that's going to be the compression limiter. So it's important that that's how you assemble this bushing stack, or you're either going to rip the bushings up in half real quick if the compression limiters aren't in there, or this washer's not here, this bolt's going to chew the face of this up. Now we got it up on a 4-post lift so you can see a little bit better, and you're going to want to do this at ride height, so that's why we're on a 4-post lift. I've got the 2 O-rings that come included with the kit. Those are going to get pressed into this face on each side of the frame mount. We've got 2 of our bushings that are then going to press into that O-ring. That O-ring will hold it all in place. Next up, we have a compression limiter here. That needs to get pressed in. And then our screw with our big, large washer will come in last. And then we're going to grab the driver's side arm. I may need 2 people here, we'll see. We can start threading this in. So we're going to start with about 3/4 of an inch here. And then depending on, we'll bolt our rear plates on, I'll show you that in a second. But to move this bar forwards and backwards, we'll turn this black bolt here and then keep this in place. And that'll actually pull this bar because there's an inside jam nut. If you turn it one way, it's going to pull it this way. Turn it the other, it'll push it out. And then we'll just tighten this jam nut up after the fact. But the next step is going to be to move back here, and we'll get our plates and show you how this is going to work. So we're going to use the 3/8 inch hardware. These are the mid-length plates, so I'm going to start with. Bolt one up here and push it in. I'm probably going to end up using the short length actually. So I'm going to switch this out real quick and go grab my short length plates. So here I've got both. You can see the long plate was almost at the rear of, past the rear of the bushing holder. The front plate's pretty close to center line. The short plate here, so it's gonna be a little easier to just push this backwards with the short plate. So now at the back here, we've pretty much got the middle of the hole lined up. So we're gonna press in our 2 bushings, and then our aluminum piece will go down the middle here. I'm just gonna use the screw to help push on this. There it goes. So we adjusted the front bolt until we got this perfectly centered. We're just slid in loosely. The 3/8 hardware is all we're gonna go get torqued to 33 foot-pounds. We're gonna go to 80 foot-pounds on the 1/2 inch hardware. And then finally come back up here and torque our jam nut, now that it's in position correctly, to 150 foot-pounds. And then our installation is complete.